It was the day before Sarah and Michael's wedding anniversary, and they were planning a special celebration by camping on a remote beach. Preparations began with enthusiasm. Sarah meticulously organized her supplies, packing sleeping bags, flashlights, and a sturdy tent. It was an opportunity to reconnect and escape the stresses of everyday life. While she tended to the equipment, Michael prepared a basket of food and drinks, ensuring they would have delicious meals under the stars. The deserted beach setting promised to be the perfect spot for a romantic weekend by the sea. With backpacks loaded and the car fueled, they headed towards the coast, eager for the adventure that awaited them. As the road stretched out before them, the anxiety of the city began to dissipate, replaced by the anticipation of peaceful days by the ocean. The sun was about to set when they reached the beach. The view of the deserted coastline with the sunset as a backdrop was spectacular. With determination, they set up their tent on the sand, ready to take in the beauty of nature and enjoy a romantic getaway. It was the beginning of a journey that would soon take a dark and terrifying turn. The sun said goodbye to the horizon, leaving behind orange and purple tones in the sky. The beach where Sarah and Michael decided to camp was completely deserted. There was no sign of other adventurers, and the feeling of isolation was palpable. While Michael finished assembling the tent, Sarah walked along the beach, feeling the soft sand beneath her bare feet. A gentle breeze from the sea played with her hair. Tranquility reigned, and they smiled at each other, happy with their choice of location. As night settled in, a full moon rose in the sky, spreading a silvery light over the beach. The sea breeze brought with it the gentle sound of waves crashing on the shore. The couple warmed themselves by the crackling fire and shared stories and laughs, feeling enveloped by the beauty and serenity of the place. As they watched the starry sky, they still had no idea what awaited in the shadows of that silent night. Fate was about to reveal its darkest and most terrifying side, challenging the tranquility they so longed for. The night advanced, and the beach remained enveloped in an almost supernatural silence. The only source of light was the roaring fire, which cast dancing shadows across the sand. Sarah and Michael were sitting around the fire, sharing a romantic dinner under the stars. The gentle sound of waves crashing on the beach created a serene atmosphere. It seemed like a perfect setting for their wedding anniversary celebration. However, as the night progressed, a feeling of restlessness began to set in. Strange sounds began to echo from the nearby forest. Furtive footsteps and unsettling whispers were audible, making the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand up. Michael also noticed something wrong and held Sarah's hand in concern. The disturbing sounds seemed to move closer, piercing the silence of the night. Sarah and Michael exchanged worried glances, wondering what could be hiding in the shadows of that isolated beach. The silent night was about to turn into a terrifying nightmare. As the uneasiness in the silent night grew, Sarah decided to take a brief walk along the beach, trying to dispel the unsettling feeling. She left the roaring fire behind and entered the darkness of the beach. As she walked, the full moon cast a silvery light across the sand, creating eerie shadows. It was then that she saw something unusual. A distant figure, an elderly woman dressed in a long white dress, whose clothes fluttered in the wind. Curious and worried, Sarah approached the figure. The woman seemed real, but her appearance was ethereal, as if she were there and at the same time not there. Before Sarah could say anything, the figure abruptly disappeared into the shadows of the night. Sarah was stunned and shocked. The sight of the elderly woman disturbed her deeply, and she ran back to the fire, where Michael was anxiously waiting for her. She told him about her strange appearance, but he tried to calm her down, attributing it to her imagination due to the unsettling atmosphere of the night. However, they would soon discover that this would not be the only supernatural experience on that isolated beach. The night progressed, but the feeling of restlessness did not lessen. Sarah and Michael decided to sneak into the tent and snuggle into their sleeping bags, hoping that a good night's sleep would chase away the night's fears. However, as the sun began to rise, Sarah woke up alone in the tent. Michael's sleeping bag lay empty next to her. She called his name but got no response. Panic gripped her as she exited the tent and frantically searched the deserted beach for Michael. Walking across the soft sand was an adrenaline rush, but there was no sign of her husband. He had disappeared without a trace. Sarah was in complete despair. She screamed his name repeatedly, but the only sound that came back was the echo of her own voice on the empty beach. The nightmare was just beginning, and the anguish of not knowing what happened to Michael was unbearable. Sarah, her heart tight with worry, continued to search for Michael on the beach. Every minute that passed increased her despair. She walked to the water's edge, hoping to see some sign of her husband emerging from the ocean, but there was nothing beyond the horizon. As her tears began to mix with the salt water, something caught her attention. Written in the sand near the tide line was a disturbing message: "He's mine now." The signature was illegible, as if written by shaking hands. Terror gripped Sarah as she stared at the ominous message. Who would have written that? What did she mean by "he's mine now"? A feeling that something evil was lurking began to overcome her, and she knew that she needed to find answers as quickly as possible. Michael was in danger, and she couldn't allow something terrible to happen to him. Determined to find clues to Michael's whereabouts, Sarah followed the mysterious footprints in the sand that led towards the forest near the beach. Each step took her deeper into the darkness of the forest. The footprints were fresh, suggesting that someone or something had been there recently. The thick vegetation of the forest murmured unsettling secrets as Sarah advanced. The winding trail of footprints led her to a shadowy clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing, she found something disturbing: a circle of stones with red candles lit on the ground. The atmosphere was heavy and charged with a strange energy. Sarah was perplexed and scared. She felt that there was something very wrong in that place. The red candles cast a dark light over the place, revealing strange symbols scratched into the stones. With her heart beating rapidly, she realized that she was facing something supernatural, something that was beyond her understanding. She knew she needed to continue her search for Michael, but now she was confronting the unknown, and fear enveloped her like a shadow. As Sarah watched the circle of stones with the red candles, the feeling that something supernatural was happening there made her uneasy. She knew she needed to move forward to find clues about Michael's disappearance, but the eerie clearing seemed to hold a strange fascination over her. As she explored the area, she discovered a narrow trail that led even deeper into the forest. The path led her to the entrance of a shadowy cave, whose rocky walls were adorned with even stranger symbols. Sarah hesitated at the cave entrance, fighting the fear that gripped her. Only the dim light of the distant bonfire on the beach illuminated the darkness within. Taking a deep breath, she turned on a flashlight and began to enter the cave, each step increasing the tension in her chest. As she explored the depths of the cave, Sarah felt that she was not alone there. Sounds echoed off the rock walls, sounds that could not be explained. Unsettling whispers and distant laughter made her skin crawl. She knew she was in uncharted territory, where dark forces seemed to be at play. Determined to find Michael, she continued forward into the darkness, unaware that she was about to witness something that would challenge her understanding of the world. Sarah advanced further into the cave, her flashlight illuminating winding paths and revealing enigmatic inscriptions on the rocky walls. Each step increased the feeling that she was delving deeper into a dark mystery. As she continued forward, Sarah began to feel an ominous presence around her. The temperature seemed to drop rapidly, and a feeling that she was being watched tormented her. Indistinct whispers filled the air, like restless voices whispering dark secrets. The flashlight began to waver, casting unsettling shadows on the cave walls. Sarah was alone, but she had the undeniable feeling that something or someone was approaching. She gripped the flashlight tightly, praying to find Michael safely and get out of that terrifying place. But whatever was lurking in the depths of the cave was about to reveal itself, and fear gripped Sarah as she stepped forward into the unknown. Sarah continued to explore the cave, although her heart was filled with fear. As she entered deeper into the bowels of the earth, the feeling that something supernatural was underway became overwhelming. Suddenly, the light from the flashlight illuminated a macabre scene, a circle of stones similar to them that he had found in the clearing, but much larger. In the center of that circle was Michael, catatonic and motionless. He was surrounded by flames that burned with unearthly intensity, but did not reach him. Around him, dark shadows moved and danced, chanting ancient, unintelligible words. Strange symbols were inscribed on the rocky floor. Sarah realized that she was facing a macabre and sinister ritual, and her heart sank with terror. Michael seemed to be in a trance, completely oblivious to Sarah's presence. He was a prisoner of unknown forces, and the atmosphere was charged with dark, evil energy. Sarah knew she needed to act quickly to save her husband, but she had no idea how to stop the ritual or face the dark forces controlling him. The horror of the situation began to unfold before her eyes, and the future seemed increasingly uncertain. Sarah was paralyzed with terror as she watched the macabre ritual in progress. Michael remained catatonic in the center of the circle of flames, completely helpless. The dancing shadows and unintelligible whispers seemed to control everything around him. A shadowy leader emerged from the shadows, his face obscured by a dark cloak and hood. He approached Michael and began chanting words in an ancient and evil language. The air was charged with an ominous energy, and the feeling that something very ancient and malevolent was being summoned hung in the air. Sarah knew she needed to make a desperate decision. With a cry of anguish, she charged towards the circle of flames, defying the supernatural forces that were at play. She grabbed Michael's hand, trying to pull him away from the circle. The dark leader looked at Sarah with glowing eyes and a wicked smile. He offered her a pact, Michael's freedom in exchange for his own soul. The choice was impossible, but Sarah knew she could not abandon her husband to that terrible fate. In a moment of desperation, Sarah agreed to the dark pact. The dark leader released Michael from the circle of flames, and the shadows retreated. But the price she would have to pay was much greater than she had ever imagined. The horror was far from over, and the dark fate that awaited them was beginning to unfold. The dark leader fulfilled his end of the pact and freed Michael from the circle of flames. The shadows receded, and the ominous atmosphere that had enveloped the cave began to dissipate. Sarah held Michael with relief, feeling his pulse weak, but he was alive. However, the feeling of triumph was fleeting. The dark leader, with his wicked smile, reminded Sarah that the pact had a price. Their souls were now scarred, condemned to an existence where horror and the supernatural would be constant companions. The dark leader disappeared into the shadows, leaving Sarah and Michael dazed and helpless. They looked around, realizing that they were inside the cave, a place full of sinister symbols and enigmatic inscriptions. Now, more than ever, they needed to find a way out and escape the clutches of the unknown. But whatever they had unleashed that night was far from over, and the nightmare that awaited them would continue to challenge their understanding of the world and their own sanity. Sarah and Michael left the cave, the dark leader's words echoing in their minds. They were alive, but their souls were stained by a dark pact that condemned them to face the unknown and the supernatural. Back in town, they tried to get their lives back on track, but the events of that night on the cursed beach continued to haunt them. Disturbing nightmares plagued his nights, bringing up terrifying images of macabre ritual and ominous shadows. The shadows also seemed to follow them, a constant, menacing presence in the shadows of the night. Sarah and Michael began to question their own sanity as they struggled to understand what they had unleashed on that isolated beach. The nightmare that haunted them showed no signs of abating. The darkness they had faced that night was now intertwined with their lives, a curse that seemed impossible to break. They were doomed to wander in the shadows, fighting unknown and terrifying forces that threatened to consume them completely. Sarah and Michael fought daily against the sinister shadows that had followed them since that night on the beach. The nightmares that tormented them had become increasingly intense and disturbing. The constant fear and the feeling that something terrible was lurking began to wear them down. The shadows were not only a spectral presence, but also a threatening force in their lives. Strange and inexplicable things were happening around him. Objects moved on their own, voices whispered in your ears, and the ambient temperature could change drastically in a matter of seconds. Sarah and Michael were in a desperate fight for survival, facing an enemy they could not see, understand, or control. They sought help from experts in supernatural phenomena, but answers were scant and unsatisfactory. As the years passed, they began to fear that they would never be free from the dark pact they had made on that isolated beach. The terror that haunted them was relentless, and the hope of a normal life had completely dissipated. The journey that began with a wedding anniversary turned into an endless nightmare where darkness and the supernatural were his only companions. Over time, The nightmare that began on that isolated beach continued to unfold relentlessly. Sarah and Michael were sinking deeper into darkness, their souls scarred by the dark pact they had made to save each other. Sinister shadows pursued them incessantly, whispering macabre promises and disturbing secrets. Their sanity was in tatters, and the line between reality and the supernatural had become blurred and uncertain. They were no longer the happy couple who had planned a romantic getaway on that beach. Now they were empty shadows of their former selves, doomed to eternity in a dark nightmare. The dark pact they had made to save their lives had turned them into prisoners of horror, unable to escape the clutches of the unknown. The end of their journey was bitter and terrifying, and the memory of that cursed night on the beach would haunt them forever, reminding them that evil is not always defeated and that darkness hides terrible secrets that should never be revealed.